Erin, just a short break before Judge Zondo came back and announced his decision around the admission of those hard drives into evidence. And I think, just judging from his comments throughout arguments, it wasn't a surprising announcement from him. He was sort of angling towards that since yesterday.
Well, he seems to have made a slight change since yesterday in terms of speaking to Advocate Hofmeyr and describing his thinking overnight around this issue of admitting the original hard drive and copies of it, digital images of it and its data. And this morning, Zondo and Hofmeyr talking about the distinction between admitting evidence, as one would do in a court of law, and receiving evidence, as one might do in a commission of inquiry. And then both discussing the distinction between the processes of a court of law around evidence and what this inquiry's sort of rule is in terms of receiving any information, any data, any evidence relevant to its work and the questions it needs to address, and also whether or not it can admit evidence. Zondo at pains to say in his final order and sort of distinction now that he's going to receive this important hard drive and the digital images of it. I almost said clones, digital images is the term he used.
So, Erin, what's important to note here, and our colleague Karen Morn has tweeted about it, the fact that the Hawks still don't have any of the Gupta leaks data in their possession. What does this admission into evidence at the state capture inquiry do for the Hawks, perhaps seeking access to these hard drives?
Well, certainly on that report, it means they now have access to this information. And what's significant here is that this original Gupta Leaks hard drive, as I'm colloquially describing it, has more than what the Gupta Leaks, in terms of media reporting and information in the public domain, has disclosed. So this is now the most accurate and most close to the original version of that hard drive and its data in existence. So it's in the curatorship, in the possession and custody of the inquiry itself. It's being held in some safe place in Pretoria after this incredible journey to Kenya earlier this year, briefly with the two whistleblowers, Stan and John, 3 members of the inquiry, 2 lawyers and one of the whistleblowers' wives. It was then flown back to South Africa and taken to this place of safekeeping in Pretoria. But in terms of the data, yes, it is possible now that the Hawks may be able to, through formal processes, engaging with the inquiry, access that information as reported by Karen Morn for Times Live. But also the inquiry itself can use the information from this original hard drive, which has now been gleaned through forensic sort of repair and recovery in their own line of questioning at the inquiry. And anyone else who wants access to that crucial information needs to make a formal sort of request to the inquiry. It's not that we're going to have willy-nilly access to this very sensitive information. And it may well be, according to Hofmeyr, that new potential witnesses and implicated persons shall be notified following what is in this never before disclosed or even available data since that hard drive was damaged.
I mean, Erin, we've been on the Hawks for months now since the Gupta leaks first emerged about when the Hawks themselves would be pursuing and verifying on its own what's contained in these Gupta leaked emails. It's going to be important to see, I mean, it's the 28th of September now, how long it takes the Hawks from today to make those moves and to gain access to what must be an incredible trove of information related to state capture.
Yes, and Hofmeyr was sort of careful to advise Zondo on the rules and the mandate of the inquiry, and that in terms of weighting this information, receiving it rather than admitting it, and what it does with its contents, that this inquiry has a distinct and different role from a court of law. Of course, there have been these questions around the validity of the hard drive and its content, and it's possible that Sahara Computers may approach the inquiry to respond to the statements of Hofmeyr and the likes that this hard drive and its content derive from the Sahara Computers server. But certainly, yes, in terms of criminal prosecutions, further investigations by the Hawks, the data in that hard drive will likely prove key, fundamental to any prosecutions going forward. And that's perhaps also why this moment, this groundbreaking moment of Zondo saying he will receive these documents, the data in this original hard drive, is so important, because it sets and freezes a moment in time, as Hofmeyr described it, where the chain of evidence, the chain of events, and the sequence of movements of this object and the data contained therein has now been sort of pinned down. And so up till this point, the integrity of that hard drive sitting somewhere, perhaps in a vault in Pretoria, has been pinned down. And that may well be significant and important in terms of the data in it and its integrity when we move forward to possible criminal prosecutions. It's a long way off. Of course, the inquiry keeps on working until late 2019, but the Hawks may well now be able to get the ball moving, provided there aren't cells within the Hawks who are working under the radar, as was indicated in a City Press article, and possibly doing things that their own head doesn't know about that could thwart prosecution on allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud.
Right, well, thanks very much for that. Erin Bates is our reporter on that story, live to us there from the state capture inquiry, which is unfolding in Parktown in Johannesburg. It sits again next week on the 3rd of October, and we are told Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene will be taking the stand.